Welcome back, this is CerealSnax, and today I just want to talk about the news of Guild Wars 2, what's going on with the patches, what's going on with some of the changes that they're trying to make to the game, other tweaks, and just everything else that's going on kind of in the Guild Wars world. I've been playing my engineer, and I've got him up to level 50 now. I've been doing a lot of different things. I've got a number of jumping puzzle videos I'd like to start putting out again. I'm trying to kind of tone it back on the jumping puzzles. I don't want to bombard the channel with jumping puzzle videos necessarily, even though I like doing them so much, but I'm going to slowly trickle them out. I've got I think 4 in the queues already to post, and I'm just trying to post in a fashion that allows, you know, me not to post like 3 or 4 a day, but maybe 1 a day. I don't want to overload everybody and myself trying to get videos out. I don't really want to talk specifically about the patches, because I think the patches lately have been very focused on just quality of life improvements, and that is good. I mean, they haven't done anything really like nerf-wise or anything crazy lately in the last 2 or 3 patches, so I don't know that I'm really going to focus on the patches too much, because, you know, they've just been doing things that I think just improve the playing style. They've done some neat things with crafting that allow you to craft right out of your bank, which is what a lot of people are asking for, and just other stuff like that. So I'm impressed with the amount of fixes they're putting out and how quickly they're trying to fix issues. I know there's some bugged events in the games and that sort of thing, but other than that, I've been enjoying my character. I've been playing through the story. I've actually gotten to a point where you can choose the faction that you want to play, and I chose the Order of Whisperers. The other 2 are the German Priory and the Vigil, and I haven't actually researched those other 2 too much, but of course I'd like to play other characters and join those as well and see what the storyline is like. I'm actually very impressed with the story so far, and I'd like to hear people's comments on what they're doing. That'd be interesting to see. I'm also curious to see at the end game kind of what options you have with those particular factions that you've chosen. Do you have anything different that other people can't get to because you're in that faction? Should be interesting. So the footage that I've put on this particular Snax mix is really just a compilation of stuff that I've been up to. So what I tried to do is try to edit it down to kind of just filter through things that I thought were interesting, and, you know, just me fighting and running around and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's what you're going to be seeing most of the clip. Also, at one point I've got a little graph that'll probably pop up in your face, but it's an interesting little graph that was posted by Guild Wars 2 ArenaNet, so you should find that interesting. So ArenaNet's been doing a really good job lately of addressing some of the issues that are going on with Guild Wars 2 and some of the complaints that have been raised on forums like Reddit and other places. One of them is about World vs. World. I know that a lot of people complain about World vs. World partially because they have a really hard time actually getting in to actually play World vs. World, and I've seen this issue too myself, and part of it is that, you know, some servers are just very, very popular, and because of that, it's very, very difficult to get in. I happen to be on Stormbluff Isle, which actually, they released a ranking of all of the worlds and how well they're doing in World vs. World, and Stormbluff Isle actually came in second, so I tend to see very long queue times just because we're such an active server when it comes to World vs. World that I have a hard time getting in. Hinge of Dinravi, of course, is first. You know, Jade Quarry's third, and then, you know, the rest of the servers just kind of fall down the list. So here's a couple of things that ArenaNet announced, and some things are probably already known by people, but other things people didn't realize. And one of them is that you can only queue for 1 World vs. World map at a time. I think that's by design. I know other games have allowed you to queue for multiple battlegrounds and that sort of thing, but Guild Wars 2 does that, and I think they do that for a reason. If you try to enter another map while queued for the current map, you'll actually join it. So you'll actually stay queued for that first map. So that's kind of a nice feature. I know that people want to queue for multiple maps, but I think that just causes a lot of confusion. You should queue for what you want, and then, you know, you can select the other maps at the same time while you're still queued. Now, if you do queue for a World vs. World map and you try to queue for a second map that's full, you'll be asked if you want to queue for the second map. And if you say yes, then you actually enter that new queue and you no longer queue for the first one. So that's just how it's going to work. And then, what else is going on with it? Well, I know that people complain about getting into Eternal Battlegrounds, and really the main reason is because everybody wants to play in Eternal Battlegrounds. But there's 3 other areas that you can go to. You can go to the Borderlands for each world, and you get the same points and the same World vs. World rewards and all that in the other Battlegrounds. I find the easiest thing to do is actually queue up for one of those first, because that queue is actually much, much shorter, and then once I'm in there, I queue up for Eternal Battlegrounds so I can get in on the real battle, I guess, as you'd call it. But in the meantime, at least I'm playing World versus World, and I'm not just kind of standing around waiting to get into Eternal Battleground. So that's one tactic you can take. One thing that's really cool about World versus World is that they're extending the time that matches last. So what that means is, in the past, they had matches that lasted 2 or 3 days, and what they've really done has been they toned that down after Head Start and made it to 24-hour matches. And what that means is that after 24 hours, they tally all the points, and then the score is given out for that particular world or server, and all 3 servers would then be ranked. So what they did is they've been running 24-hour matches ever since the 1st of September, and what that's done is given them all kinds of data points that allows them to rank the servers, and that's how they release their rankings. And now what they're going to start doing is toning up the matches so that the matches will now last for 7 days before points are tallied. And that's really cool. It's really going to give a cool system of World versus World that'll last a lot longer. It'll make things feel a lot more persistent and the world feel a lot more persistent. So they're going to do 7-day World versus World matches, and then sometime in the future they're actually going to change to 14-day matches. So it's going to be very interesting how that works. I prefer that system to, like, you know, I always did like the long Alteric Valley matches. And when you have a 7-day match, the fact that your server is not necessarily online as much at night and you lose all your keeps and all that doesn't matter as much, because it's really about what happens within the entire 7 days as opposed to that 24 hours. So I think in the long run that's going to be a really neat change. So that's kind of what's going on in the World versus World world. I've been going in there. I'm still only level 50, so I'm starting to feel like I have a little bit more impact in there, but I think that at level 80 you start to really see a bigger difference. I have some World vs. World videos. I haven't seen a lot of terrible things happen to me because I'm under-leveled, but I think having those extra traits really does help you out. Even though I think Guild Wars 2 is one of those games where it's not so much how you spec, it's how you use your spec, if that makes any sense. So I don't think there's any magic spec that people can do to just automatically do well. I think they exist, but I think ArenaNet's trying to get rid of those specs because they really want people to understand the mechanics of it and not necessarily have like this cookie cutter spec that makes you win all the time. So you may wonder, you know, kind of, you've heard a lot about people who have gotten to 80 really quickly, and like, what have they done? You know, what have they done in their end game? Is it that quick of a game? And I think, I've talked about this before, but getting to level 80 is not the end of Guild Wars 2, and I think that's unfair to criticize it like that. I've been playing for multiple hours, and I'm still level 50. I'm kind of trying to take my time, but at the same time, I feel like even if I rushed, it would take me a while to get to 80, at least the way I play. And part of the reason is there's so much to do, and I can start thinking of some things on the top of my head that really you can do even if you haven't reached 80 yet. I mean, it's mind-boggling the amount of things to do, and sometimes I feel like there's so much I could be making videos on that I'm not, just because there's so much to do. You know, there's the personal story. I haven't even talked about that, the factions involved with that. There's defeating the last boss, the Zaitan, the, you know, unlocking all your skills, the raising your crafting, earning gold, you know, getting karma, playing through all the dungeons in story mode, playing through all the dungeons in explorable mode. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's other stuff too that I want to do. There's sets of armor that you can get from each dungeon. There's sets of armor you can get from your factions. The Order of Whispers, for example, is the faction that I've chosen, and they have their own set of armor that you can purchase. And then you can do really cool things with armor that I haven't even talked about yet, and that is allows you to have stats from armor that you loot, and then you can make that armor look like the way you want it to look like with the other types of armor. So it's really cool. You can craft exotic weapons, exotic armor, real powerful sets. There's just all kinds of stuff. There's titles that you can get. There's explorable areas, of course, that we've talked about before. There's crafting weapons in the Mystic Forge. I mean, I could go on and on. There's all kinds of different things that you can do. There's also structured PvP, which I touched on briefly, but have not really talked about more. And then, of course, there's making other characters. You know, I've only played an engineer so far, but I really want to touch on Necromancer. I really want to play around with Guardian a little bit. I just want to experience those other facets of the game. And each class is so different that I feel like there's still a lot for me to do. So I don't think that there's really a worry, at least in my own mind, of running out of stuff to do. And I'm pretty impressed with the amount of content they've put in for a game that doesn't have a subscription. Of course there's going to be expansions, and of course they're going to have other ways to collect their money and monetize their game, but you know, I think that from a content perspective, I think it is on par from what I experienced when Warcraft came out, World of Warcraft. and I was pretty amazed by the content in that when it first came out, and likewise for Guild Wars 2. So, you know, to each their own, but so far I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I think that's the main point, right? Having fun. So I wanted to briefly touch on the economy of Guild Wars 2 because they have a economist actually on staff by the name of John Smith. I don't think he's related to Adam Smith, the famous economist, but kind of cool. His name's John Smith. Anyway, he has taken time to compile a lot of stats. He did this early on in the beta to show kind of, you know, what the trends were, and the trends haven't changed a whole lot. One of the things that did change is that in beta, I remember that cooking was taken by practically nobody in terms of a crafting profession, and that's changed actually quite a bit. You can actually look at this graph that I've put up on the screen and kind of see breakdowns. He's made it real simplistic, which is nice. On the top left, of course, you can see the gender breakdown, and of course there's more male characters than there are female characters, and I would guess that there's probably more male players than there are depicted on this pie chart. It's probably closer to 80%, but I'm not sure. The other thing that you will take a look at is the professions that people are playing up in the top right, and you can see that Mesmer is in the middle. It's that dark green bar. It's actually the lowest played, which I expected, and same thing with Engineer, which is the red on the far left, and the Necromancer, which is on the far right, the gray. One thing I was surprised by is that Guardian was actually the fourth lowest played profession, and I thought that they'd be a lot higher. I thought that they would actually be beating out Ranger and Elementalist, but they are not. And Thief is actually lower than I expected too, and Warrior is about where you expected, top. That's to be expected. Now on the bottom right, you'll see all the crafting professions, and surprisingly enough, and I guess it makes sense because the least played professions are Mesmer and Necro, and they probably would benefit from Artificer the most, which is actually the lowest taken profession right now. But cooking is tied with jewelry and leatherworking and tailoring, which is very surprising to me. I did not expect cooking to be that high up in terms of popularity. And surprisingly, Huntsman and armor smithing are actually fairly low as well. The most taken profession, I guess, is to be expected is weapon crafting, especially when you look at all the people playing warriors and they want to have cool looking weapons. And then of course on the left you've got the race breakdown, which is unsurprising. The Char, the least played, followed by the Ashura and the Sylvari. And then of course humans are the most played, which is to be predicted. And then surprisingly though, Norn is higher. I thought Norn would kind of be even with the other four races, but I guess it makes more sense because they're human-like, and most players, I think, I'm finding out, like to play human. They're just more familiar with that. I prefer to play the strange, odd characters like the Char and orcs in Warcraft and that sort of thing, the undead. So that's just kind of, I like to be the crazy different races because I think that's the point of playing a role-playing game. But that's all up to everybody's opinion, so to each his own. So I hope you got some information out of this graph. I think it's pretty interesting. So I guess the last thing before I sign off on this Snax mix is that I've started a series called Guild Wars 2 Tours, where I go from zone to zone and just kind of talk about the lore of the zone and some interesting areas in the zone, kind of what's going on modern day with that zone. So if you have any interest in seeing more of those, please let me know, comment, maybe even pick out a zone you'd like to see more of, and I'll gladly go there and do some exploring and take some video and talk about it. It's really up to you guys. I enjoy making them, but they do take a little bit of time to even get 6 minutes of footage because you have to go to all these different places. And I love doing it, and I enjoy doing it for myself, and that's really what my channel is about. But I'd also like to kind of see if anybody else is interested in seeing that. I know that some of the people commented on the video itself, and I'm going to put more out regardless of what you say, but I'd love to hear your feedback on that respect. So, that said, if you liked my Snax Mix number 5, please like, and if you haven't subscribed already to my channel, please do so. I'm going to continue to do videos of all kinds, not just Guild Wars 2, but that's what I'm here for. So, thanks for joining me.